Line 82483 is just a number in a cemetery register, but it was key to solving a 44-year-old mystery and revealing the truth about a victim forgotten for decades. Welcome to Midnight Hour. Subscribe, turn on notifications, like, and share with your friends. But how did it all begin? Let's go back to 1975 when three teenagers stumbled upon something that changed the course of this case forever. Most people who saw line 82483 and its cryptic phrase, "the bones of an unidentified white woman," wouldn't hesitate to pass by without hesitation. But Christina wasn't. Perhaps because she was born and raised in Strongsville, the same city where the cemetery is located. Or perhaps because a young woman was murdered and buried without a name miles from her childhood home. To understand all of this, let's go back to February 15th, 1975. The unidentified remains were buried and the case was quickly closed. But what if I told you that this ending was only the real beginning of the story? On that day, three teenagers discovered human remains on the banks of the Rocky River. They notified their families, who immediately called the police. When the officers arrived and began digging, they found an incomplete skeleton, eroded and scattered by months of exposure to the elements and crawling animals. The lower jaw and most of the teeth were missing, and the skull had only 5 teeth, with a .24 caliber bullet lodged within it. The medical examiner determined the remains were those of a young woman, approximately 20 years old at the time of death. A rough estimate given the condition of the remains. In short, investigators were faced with a grim reality. A young white woman murdered and dumped on the banks of the Rocky River, executed with a single bullet to the head. With no missing person report matching her description, the case quickly went cold, especially given the primitive investigative tools of 1975. Police tried to find any clues, even comparing the skull to Patty Hearst, the headline-grabbing heiress of the time, hoping it would solve America's most notorious case. Patty Hearst was kidnapped by a gang, then sympathized with her kidnappers and joined them in armed robberies, a phenomenon known as Stockholm Syndrome. However, a comparison of dental records revealed that it wasn't her. The files of other missing persons also didn't match, and no family came forward to claim her. 3 months later, on May 15, 1975, the remains were buried in an unidentified graveyard without a funeral service, family, or friends. From 1975 onward, the case files gathered dust, the detectives retired, and the young woman on the banks of the Rocky River was completely forgotten. Decades passed, and the case lay buried under layers of dust, until a curious college student brought it back to life. In 2014, Christina 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭, a biology student browsing through cemetery records, came across the poignant phrase, "bones of an unidentified white female." Determined that this girl deserved a name 44 years later, she was determined. A tireless researcher, she spent hours in local libraries, sifting through old newspaper archives for details of the crime. Hoping to uncover clues she'd overlooked, she found nothing. Just a brief article about a murdered girl found by children and forgotten shortly thereafter, without any media pressure or follow-up. Undeterred, Christina contacted the Akron police, but faced numerous obstacles. Case files were incomplete, some departments didn't have records, and others required official clearances that could take months. Despite the frustration, Akron Police Lieutenant Don Self was different. Seeing Christina's determination, he did something extraordinary. He gave her copies of the original case files, crime scene photos, the coroner's report, and investigators' notes, documents the police hadn't seen in decades. Christina had hit a dead end, but the internet was waiting, specifically Reddit, which turned one person's curiosity into a massive investigative storm. The images Christina received were terrifying. A skull covered in mud with a bullet hole, most of its teeth missing, and evidence of brutal violence. With the full case file in hand, she reached the limit of what she could do alone. She needed more attention, a collective intelligence united by a shared passion. So she turned to Reddit, a platform that houses communities for all interests. Christina joined a group of over 400,000 members obsessed with cold cases and missing persons, and posted under the username 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭. She shared everything: cemetery records, case files, photos, and her theories. The reaction was intense. Users were outraged by the lack of a record of the victim in the national database, sparking a collective outcry. How could a victim be erased from official records without any effort being made to find her killer? Reddit users took action, some searching missing persons databases since the crime was discovered, while others formulated plausible theories about the crime. The case spread beyond Reddit to other true crime platforms, attracting retired police officers, geneticists, and amateur investigators. Among thousands of users, one man changed everything. Not a police officer or a detective, but a retired accountant whose hobby is reconstructing the faces of the dead. 𝐼𝐶, a 54-year-old retired accountant from California, had a unique talent: reconstructing faces from skulls using computer software. He self-taught himself about head anatomy, tissue depth, and facial structure, and his work rivaled that of professionals. He helped solve an old case involving a girl named Tammy Alexander by reconstructing her face. The goal was simple: create a distinctive face to commemorate a memory that would lead to the killer. But this case was challenging. No lower jaw, no front teeth, no hair color. The jaw shaped the face, hair influenced identification, and the front teeth defined the lips. Carl hesitated for months, then studied the skull from every angle. He used anatomical data to estimate tissue depth and jaw size, and consulted forensic experts to place the lips over the remaining 5 teeth. He chose a neutral brown hair color to make him easier to identify. He finally arrived at soft features, kind eyes, and a childlike face. For the first time in 40 years, the victim had a face that people could relate to. The photo spread like wildfire, but the real shock wasn't online. It was the discovery that the girl's data had never been entered into the National Missing Persons database. Her face was widely shared on Reddit and elsewhere, but no one recognized her until 2016, when the surprise happened. While working on another case, Carl consulted a forensic pathologist who was shocked to learn that the girl had no record in the National Missing Persons database, NamUs. The data of every missing person in the United States, dental records and descriptions, is supposed to be entered into the national database for comparison with unidentified remains. But this girl's data was never entered, a simple administrative error that delayed justice for 40 years. Her family may still be searching for her, oblivious to her fate, like countless others who have gone missing due to similar oversights. This revelation turns the case upside down. Police entered the details of the case and Carl's facial reconstruction into the NamUs database in December 2016. During a routine search, Sergeant Jeff Smith noted the girl's age, the location, and the time of her crime. Comparing this data with missing persons reports from the same period, he found a match: a September 1974 report of a 17-year-old girl missing from Strongsville, months before the remains were found. The age, time, and location matched perfectly. When Smith compared the missing girl's photo to Carl's model, the resemblance was striking. The case was waiting for an entry in the database to reveal the truth. 44 years later, her name was Linda Pagano. Her identification took time. Dental records showed a striking resemblance, but not conclusive evidence. DNA analysis was required, which necessitating exhuming remains from a grave that had been fated for 44 years. The first attempt failed. They dug up the wrong grave because the victim's remains, especially the skull, were incomplete. After numerous attempts, they found the correct location and extracted the bones described in line 82483. DNA samples were sent to the University of North Texas for testing. Due to the severe decomposition, standard DNA testing was ineffective, so mitochondrial DNA, which is passed from mother to child, was used to compare Linda's living siblings, if any. Linda was born on April 11, 1957, the youngest of her siblings. She was small and outgoing with a big heart. Everyone described her as kind, hardworking, independent, and very close to her mother, who, after her father's death, married Byron Cleveland, a volatile alcoholic. Linda was constantly at odds with him as he tried to control her rebellious teenage spirit. After high school, she worked in a restaurant, supporting herself. She avoided trouble and dreamed of things beyond her modest circumstances. On her last night, August 31, 1974, Linda attended a Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young concert, a massive 3-hour performance attended by 80,000 people and featuring 26 songs. She traveled with her friend Steve Wilson and others in her own car. The last song was a tribute to the students killed at Kent State University in 1970 during anti-war protests. Sadly, hours later, Linda met a similar fate. The concert ended at 11 p.m. and she dropped off her friends. Byron was waiting for her at home, drunk and moody. After a heated argument about her late return, he dismissed her, saying, "Don't come back." Byron was the last person to see her alive. On September 2, 1974, Linda's mother reported her missing, stating that she had no money or place to go. She disappeared, and all attempts to find her were unsuccessful. Byron died, taking the details of that night with him in 1990, taking his secrets to his grave. Police suspected a connection between the two incidents, but in the absence of a body, evidence, or witnesses, they were unable to file any charges. In early 2017, mitochondrial DNA results showed a near-certain match, supported by Linda's age, height, time, and location of death, as well as Carl's eerily accurate reconstruction. After 44 years, the remains had a name and a family and were no longer anonymous. On July 12, 2018, Akron police held a press conference announcing the closure of Ohio's longest-running case. Linda Marie Pagano was a murder victim, and her case was reopened to find her killer. Linda's brother, Michael, expressed his deep disappointment in the police. In 1974, he told them that the remains might be Linda's, urging a connection between them and her disappearance, but they dismissed him, claiming there was no connection. He said, "I thought I would die without knowing what happened to her. In our hearts, we knew who did this," referring to Byron. In January 2019, Linda was laid to rest next to her mother, this time with a headstone, not just a line in a funeral register. The investigation into her killer continued, despite deteriorating evidence and dead witnesses. Police suspected that Steve Wilson might have information, but were unable to locate him, unsure whether he was still alive or even his real name. From a single line in a cemetery to thousands of online messages to reopening a forgotten case, all because one person followed their curiosity. Do you think Linda's stepfather, Byron, is really the killer, or is there another suspect we don't know yet? If you were in Christina's shoes, would your curiosity drive you to investigate a strange line in a cemetery register, or would you just scroll over it? Please share your opinions in the comments below the video. Christina wasn't seeking fame or recognition. However, with her determination, the help of Reddit, and the curiosity of countless readers, she succeeded in uncovering Linda Pagano's fate. Together, they gave Linda back her name and a decent grave, something she'd been denied for more than 4 decades. You'd think the whole world was pointing at you, that every piece of evidence screamed your name. But the truth was far stranger than anyone could have imagined. Beneath the victim's fingernails, they found your DNA. Yet you were never there, never set foot in that house. Welcome to Midnight. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, share, and hit the notification bell. The crime scene was in Monte Sereno, a city in California, USA, known for its wealth and exclusivity. This serene, upscale town, home to business tycoons, athletes, and celebrities, was considered one of the safest places around, until that fateful night of November 30th, 2012, when tranquility turned into a nightmare. That night, a woman called 911 in a state of panic and tears. She said criminals had broken into her home, attacked her and her husband, and left chaos in their wake. They struck her in the face, dragged her from her bedroom to the living room where her husband was, beat them both, and bound them with duct tape, covering their eyes. The intruders ransacked the house, stole valuables, and fled. As soon as they were gone, she managed to free herself and call for help. When the police arrived, they found the front gate wide open. Inside, the woman who made the call was injured, suffering from bruises and minor fractures. Her husband, however, was lying on the floor, unconscious, his face battered. Duct tape was wrapped tightly around his head, his hands bound with a tablecloth. The officers carefully removed the tape from his face, but when paramedics arrived, despite their efforts to perform CPR, he couldn't be saved. He was rushed to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead. His wife was also taken to the hospital for treatment. The victim was 𝐟𝐨𝐫𝐞𝐭, a well-known figure in Monte Sereno. The police who responded to the scene were shocked. They knew him personally, which made the tragedy hit even harder. 𝐟𝐨𝐫𝐞 was a successful businessman, and the news of his death sent ripples of disbelief through the community. The crime scene was surprisingly orderly. No signs of a chaotic break-in. The house was massive, which meant scouring it for evidence would take time. The woman told investigators that 2 or 3 intruders had stormed the home, suggesting they'd need to search meticulously for traces of DNA. As the investigation began, detectives felt something was off. The absence of forced entry, no broken windows, no smashed doors, hinted that criminals might have had a key or been let inside. They'd even left the TV on in the living room, as if they'd walked in on 𝐟𝐴𝐵𝐻 casually watching a show. The street where 𝐶𝐭 lived housed about 30 homes, all without iron gates except his. The intruders had targeted his house specifically, stealing expensive jewelry and over $30,000 in cash. How had they gotten in? The police discovered an open window, suggesting it might have been their entry point. But the lack of forced entry led them to another theory. Perhaps someone had a key, or maybe 𝐟𝐴𝐵𝐻 had let them in himself. The medical examiner confirmed that 𝐟𝐴𝐵𝐻, aged 66 and suffering from heart problems, had died of asphyxiation, with duct tape tightly wrapped around his nose and mouth. Bruises covered his body, evidence of a violent struggle. His wife recounted how one of the intruders called 𝐟𝐴𝐵𝐻 by name during the attack, suggesting they knew him and had chosen his house deliberately. The investigation deepened. Surveillance footage from the area was reviewed, but the recordings were unclear. However, in the kitchen sink, they found a pile of gloves, cleaned thoroughly with soap, as if criminals had tried to erase their traces. They also found a roll of duct tape, but it yielded no fingerprints or DNA. The evidence was sent to the lab, but hopes of finding usable traces were slim. The detectives were convinced the perpetrators were close to the 𝐶𝐭 family, someone who knew the house's layout and routines. The absence of forced entry pointed to an inside job, so they began investigating 𝐟𝐴𝐵𝐻's family, friends, and acquaintances. They learned that 𝐟𝐴𝐵𝐻 had immigrated from India to California in 1970, working in electronics before buying a liquor factory and a large event hall. These ventures made him a fortune, and he became a well-known figure in the area, often seen at parties and social events. After selling his businesses and retiring, he lived a lavish lifestyle, spending freely. To understand him better, the police seized his personal computer and phone to examine his contacts, frequented websites, and daily interactions. At the crime scene, they noticed something odd about the gloves. One appeared to have been turned inside out, as if worn incorrectly. The forensic expert took a DNA sample from the inner lining and sent it for analysis. Meanwhile, the detectives uncovered troubling details about 𝐟𝐴𝐵𝐻's personal life. He was spending time with sex workers and had amassed significant debts. His wealth, once vast, was dwindling fast as he showered women with expensive gifts, jewelry, trips, and even financial support for their children. The breakthrough came with the DNA results. The forensic team identified 3 suspects: Lucas Anderson, 21, Javier Garcia, 22, and D'Angelo Austin, 26. DNA from Lucas was found on the duct tape and Ravish's hand, while Javier's DNA was on the gloves in the kitchen sink. D'Angelo's DNA was also present at the scene. Further investigation revealed that D'Angelo lived in Oakland, just an hour from 𝐬𝐮𝐬's home, and was a key member of a dangerous Oakland gang, with Javier as an associate. Lucas, however, had no known ties to the gang, but the evidence against him was strong. The police were elated, believing the case was nearly solved. They had solid evidence, DNA at the crime scene and on the victim's body. The only challenge was tracking down the suspects. D'Angelo was hard to pin down, with no fixed address, often staying in hotels after major heists. Javier was already in custody for another theft. When detectives confronted him in jail, he seemed unfazed, denying any knowledge of Ravish or his wife. "What charges?" he asked, feigning confusion. When shown photos of the victims and told his DNA was found at the scene, he claimed ignorance. Lucas's public defender raised doubts, pointing out a critical detail. Lucas had a solid alibi. At the exact time of the crime, he was in the hospital, checked every 5 to 10 minutes by a nurse. How could his DNA have ended up at the crime scene? This revelation stunned the investigators. They began to suspect that Lucas might have met Ravish earlier that day, perhaps leaving traces of his DNA inadvertently. But Lucas insisted he'd never met Ravish, and further checks confirmed he had no gang ties. The only evidence against him was the DNA, with no other proof linking him to the crime. Meanwhile, the police tracked down D'Angelo through his sister, Katrina Fritz, who had lent him a rental car. They also located Javier. Both denied involvement, but the DNA evidence was damning, and they were charged with murder and robbery. The detectives still needed to identify who had helped the criminals plan the heist. That's when an unexpected twist emerged. Katrina Fritz, D'Angelo's sister, became a key figure. She had been in a relationship with Ravish for about a decade, frequently visiting his home. She knew which doors were left unlocked and where valuables were kept. When questioned, she admitted to an illicit relationship with Ravish, who had given her money, jewelry, a car, and even promised $30,000 as a down payment for a house. But as Ravish's wealth dwindled, so did the gifts and money. Furious, Katrina had a motive. She denied knowing about the robbery or her brother's involvement, but phone records told a different story. D'Angelo had texted her, saying he was outside Ravish's house just hours before the crime. Confronted with this evidence, Katrina fell silent. The police were convinced she was involved and charged her with murder. A partial DNA sample from the crime scene, unidentifiable at first, posed another mystery. The detectives needed to find its owner to complete the puzzle. They ruled out Lucas, as his DNA was likely transferred accidentally. The key clue came from the paramedics. On the night of the crime, they had found Lucas unconscious in the street in a drunken stupor and took him to the hospital. Just an hour later, the same paramedics responded to Ravish's home. They used the same pulse oximeter on both men, transferring Lucas's DNA to Ravish's finger in the process. This explained the presence of Lucas's DNA, and all charges against him were dropped after 5 months in custody. Katrina eventually confessed, detailing her role in the crime. She had orchestrated the break-in, guiding D'Angelo, Javier, and a third man, Marcelio Drummer, a close friend of D'Angelo and a prominent gang member. She told them where to find valuables and how to enter the house. Phone records confirmed their movements, and a search of Marcelio's home uncovered a stolen bracelet from Ravish's house. His DNA matched the partial sample from the crime scene. If your DNA was found at a crime scene you'd never set foot in, how would you prove your innocence? Do you think all seemingly strong forensic evidence is always correct, or can it sometimes mislead justice? I look forward to your thoughts in the comments. In court, 4 years after the crime, Katrina testified against D'Angelo, Javier, and Marcelio. They were sentenced to life in prison without parole. Katrina, charged only with robbery, received a 17-year sentence. The The case, once a tangled web of clues, was finally unraveled, revealing a tale of betrayal, greed, and a meticulously planned crime that shattered the peace of Monte Sereno. The police didn't just find body parts hidden in the freezer. They discovered that the killers had cooked pieces of the victim in a pot with vegetables. An unbelievable crime, but who was the victim? And why did her life end in such a horrific way? Welcome to Midnight Stories. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and please give this video a like and share it with others. But to truly understand this case, we first need to know, who was 𝐵𝐵𝐶𝐞? 𝐵𝐵𝐶𝐞, 28, was a prominent social media influencer, sharing stunning photos and videos of her life with her nearly 100,000 Instagram followers. She achieved global success as a fashion influencer. Her recent posts included snaps from this year's Paris Fashion Week, while previous posts featured her alongside Grammy Award-winning musician Pharrell Williams. Last month, she appeared on the digital cover of 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐷𝐬𝐿 Monaco, which described her as a fashion icon and media personality who captivates the world with her impeccable fashion sense and boundless passion for style. Her last Instagram post was published on February 19, 2023, showcasing her collaboration with 𝐬𝐿 Monaco. 𝐵𝐵 is the mother of 4 children, aged 3 to 10. 2 of her eldest children are with her ex-husband, 28-year-old Alex Kwong, who was later taken into care by her mother after their separation. 𝐵𝐵 later married Chris Tam, member of a wealthy family who owned a famous restaurant chain. Her glamorous life suddenly took a dark turn when she was first reported missing when she failed to pick up her daughter from school for 3 consecutive days. Later, she was last seen on CCTV at 12:29 p.m. on Sunday, February 21, 2023, on Fuchun Street in Tai Po. She was wearing a white shirt, white trousers, and carrying a purple handbag. After a missing person report was filed for 𝐵𝐵𝐶𝐞, police were led to a house in Tai Po, a quiet suburb in Hong Kong. What they found inside was shocking. 2 legs belonging to a young woman were discovered in the freezer, pots of soup filled with human tissue, and a skull placed in a cooking pot, boiled together with vegetables. The police could not initially locate the victim's torso, head, or hands at the crime scene. Investigators later revealed that the apartment had been carefully prepared by 𝐵𝐵's former father-in-law, Alex Kwong's father, weeks before the murder. Inside, police uncovered gruesome tools used for dismembering a body, including meat grinders, electric saws, long raincoats, gloves, and masks. Personal belongings of 𝐵𝐵𝐶𝐞 were also found: her identity cards, credit cards, and a pink Hermes handbag. Alan Chung Na Loon from the crime unit stated earlier that 28-year-old 𝐵𝐵𝐶𝐞 had financial disputes worth tens of millions of Hong Kong dollars with her ex-husband and family. He added that some people were dissatisfied with how 𝐶𝐞 was managing her financial assets. But before we go deeper, here's something most people don't know. 𝐵𝐵 was actually supporting this very family financially, even after their separation. Her ex-brother-in-law, Anthony Kwong, worked as her driver. Meanwhile, investigators kept digging, and the clues only grew darker. On Tuesday morning, more than 100 officers wearing protective gear headed to a landfill in Ta Kwu Ling, northeast of the New Territories, about a 15-minute drive from mainland China. They were searching for 𝐵𝐵𝐶𝐞's missing body parts using excavators and shovels. Police had previously stated that they were still searching for her hands and torso. According to media reports, Detective Inspector Alan Chung told reporters the suspects disposed of several bags containing important evidence on the morning of February 22nd. This evidence could be human body parts, the victim's clothes, her phone, or even weapons. Chung added that so far, officers have found nothing significant except for some bones, and police have been unable to confirm whether they belonged to a human or an animal. And soon, the spotlight turned toward those closest to her. February 25th, 2023. Police initially arrested 3 suspects. 𝐸𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞𝐭 Kit, her former brother-in-law and driver. 𝐸𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, her former father-in-law, a retired police officer. 𝐸𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞's wife, her former mother-in-law. Later, 𝐸 Chi-wing, 47, 𝐸𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞's lover, was also arrested for helping 𝐸𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞 hide. Later, on February 25th, 𝐸𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, Abby Choi's ex-husband, was arrested after a massive manhunt and a failed attempt to flee Hong Kong by sea. But it was the forensic team that revealed the most chilling details. March 2023. DNA tests confirmed that the recovered head was that of Abby Choi. Police intensified their search at the Ta Kwu Ling landfill for her missing body parts, hands, and torso. Bloodstains were found in her ex-brother-in-law's car, and more than 30 tools, including knives, saws, and hammers, were seized for forensic examination. It is believed that Abby Choi was assaulted inside the car and was unconscious when she was taken home. Police stated, "There is a perforation on the right rear side of her skull, so the forensic pathologist believes this was the cause of death." February 27, 2023. Murder charges were brought against 𝐸𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, ex-husband, 𝐸𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, his brother, 𝐸𝐾 Kau, their father. Alex's mother was charged with perverting the course of justice. The court denied bail to all 4. Was charged with conspiracy to murder, but was released on bail. March 2nd, 2023. The 6th suspect, Lam Shun, 41, a yacht charter company employee, was arrested for helping Alex attempt to escape with 300,000 Hong Kong dollars. Under Hong Kong law, murder is punishable by life imprisonment. The death penalty was abolished in Hong Kong in 1993. This is how the life of a mother of 4 came to an end, at the hands of those who were supposed to be the closest to her. And this is how the tragic story of Abby Choi finally came to light. Do you think Abby Choi could have avoided this tragic ending if she had cut ties with her ex-husband's family earlier? If you were the judge in this case, what punishment do you believe the killers truly deserve? Share your thoughts in the comments below. August 2021, Fort Worth, Texas. A dumpster fire quietly burns off Bonnie Drive. When firefighters put out the flames around 3 a.m., what they find inside shocks even the most seasoned investigators. 3 dismembered, badly charred bodies. It's the beginning of a case that will unravel one of the most disturbing killing sprees Texas has seen in years, and reveal the mind of a murderer who claimed he was offering human sacrifices in the name of God. For more, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and don't forget to like and share. On August 29, 2021, residents near Bonnie Drive notice smoke rising from a dumpster. Fire crews arrive, and once the fire is extinguished, they make a horrifying discovery: human remains chopped into pieces. 3 bodies, severed hands and feet, a decapitated head. Everything burned beyond recognition. Whoever was behind this had even erased fingerprints and dental marks. The only tangible lead investigators have is a grainy surveillance video showing a Jeep Cherokee pulling up to the dumpster around 3 a.m. Homicide detectives and digital forensics teams immediately begin recovering footage. Meanwhile, forensic specialists carefully extract DNA from the charred bones and cross-match it with the database of missing persons. Within days, the victims are identified. David Loiris, 42, from Fort Worth, a man with a history of petty crime. Merrick Cruz Mathis, 33, a mother of 6. Lauren Phillips, 34, who had recently become friends with the killer and was hoping to turn her life around. None of them had been reported missing together. So, how did their paths cross? Who lured them to their deaths? The Jeep in the surveillance footage becomes the critical clue. Police trace it back to a friend of Jason Allen Thornburg, a 41-year-old apprentice electrician. Investigators quickly locate Thornburg's own Grand Cherokee and find out he'd been staying at the Mid-City Inn in Euless, Texas. Hotel cameras confirm it. The very night the bodies were dumped, Thornburg is seen walking from his room to his Jeep, carrying large Rubbermaid containers and wearing a protective suit normally used for hazardous materials cleanup. When questioned, Thornburg doesn't deny it. Instead, in a chillingly calm voice, he admits he killed 3 people in his hotel room and burned their remains to free their souls. He explains that he has a deep knowledge of the Bible and truly believes God commands human sacrifice. Crime scene technicians later find pools of blood under the bed, cuts in the bathtub, and surgical tools left behind. Thornburg describes, in meticulous detail, how over 4 days he slaughtered David Loiris and Merrick Mathis, strangled Lauren Phillips with an electrical cord, and then dismembered their bodies in the hotel bathtub. He confesses to eating part of Loiris's heart. After each killing, he bagged the remains, hid them under his bed, and eventually transported them in storage bins to the dumpster where he set them on fire. Detectives suddenly realize they've stumbled across a serial killer who believes he's working in service of God. And the confessions don't stop there. When asked if there were other victims, Thornburg says yes. He admits to killing his roommate, Mark Jewell, 61, back in May 2021. At the time, it was written off as an accidental house fire. Thornburg now tells police he slit Jewell's throat, opened a gas line, lit a candle, and blew up the home. He also shocks investigators by admitting he killed his girlfriend, Tania B.I., in 2017. A mother of 2, Tania vanished after leaving her aunt's home in Tehachapi, New Mexico with Thornburg. She had previously filed a domestic violence case against him, claiming he hit her with a coffee pot and choked her. Just weeks before she disappeared, Gallup police had found her bleeding after another fight with Thornburg. She told them he had thrown a glass coffee pot at her face. She was hospitalized, and then she was gone. Jason Thornburg's mind was a disturbing contradiction. Disciplined enough to plan elaborate murders, yet chaotic enough to justify them with mystical delusions. Forensic psychologists later identified several traits. Religious delusions, believing God had personally commanded him to kill. Sadistic tendencies, deriving satisfaction from controlling, hurting, and mutilating others. Psychopathic traits, lacking empathy, manipulating trust, displaying superficial charm. Ritualistic behavior. Killing, dismembering, and burning bodies suggested an obsessive need to dominate not only the living, but the dead. By destroying the body, he may have believed he erased the person entirely, completing his mission. The defense argued Thornburg suffered from severe mental illness and sought to excuse his crimes. But in September 2021, police arrested Jason Thornburg. Hotel manager Kanti Gandhi later said nothing about him raised suspicion. He seemed normal. I spoke to him many times. He never revealed anything. Thornburg was taken into custody on September 25th. Within weeks, a Tarrant County grand jury indicted him on 3 counts of capital murder. In February 2022, another grand jury added charges of murder and arson for the death of Mark Jewell. New Mexico authorities reopened the case of Tania B.I. Thornburg underwent a psychiatric evaluation but was declared competent to stand trial. Prosecutors announced they would seek the death penalty. The defense argued that the killer should be excused, claiming he was mentally ill. My question to you, the viewer, do you believe that's true? And my second question, after hearing this terrifying story, do you still trust people so easily? Share your thoughts in the comments. Victims' families confronted him in court, describing the pain he had caused.
It turned into an unbearable pain. It still hurts. Still hurts, sir. And coming to this trial for the last few weeks, almost a month, just reopen all those wounds.
The Lord is a great start in life with a strong foundation, hard-working parents with long careers, stellar grandparents with personal values that set the character for our homes. But here we are, trying to understand the addictions that set her on a path that crossed a demon lot called Joseph Thornburg. God takes great care in giving us life and free will to be good people. Joseph Thornburg, you have committed the ultimate blasphemy against God. And for me, you took my little sister from us. You took her from 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐜𝐫𝐢, Zoe. And you show no remorse for what you did. You won't even tell us where she's at.
On December 4th, 2024, Jason Allen Thornburg was sentenced to death. Today, he sits on death row, awaiting execution. He thought he got away with it. For 45 years, he lived a quiet life as a father, husband, and community scout leader. But the past never forgets. And when the knock came at his door, justice was finally ready to answer. My name is Detective Griever. I've been chasing shadows for over 20 years, but nothing ever haunted me like the case of John Arthur Gautreaux. I've seen a lot in my years on the force: cold cases, missing people, broken families, but nothing like the case of John Arthur Gautreaux, the man who smiled for decades while hiding unspeakable things. It started like any other day at the station, a routine review of old DNA files. But when the lab pinged on a partial familial match linked to a 1973 murder, something clicked. We had new tools, and the past was finally speaking. The match led us to a man living quietly in Hayward, California. He was 74 years old, a grandfather, a former scout leader. He looked like any other aging American. But his name appeared in the database connected to a crime scene involving a young woman found strangled near Stanford University decades ago. We dug deeper. The more we looked, the darker it got. In 1973, Leslie Perloff, a 21-year-old law clerk, was found dead in the hills outside Stanford, a floral scarf tied tightly around her neck. There were no leads, no suspects, only silence. But the DNA under her fingernails never went away. It waited. Then came the 1974 case. Janet Taylor. Same age, same area, same cause of death. It was too similar to ignore. We used genealogical databases to reconstruct a family tree. All signs pointed to one man, John Gautreaux. When I saw his name, I felt something. That pulse detectives get when they know they're on the edge of something big. But we couldn't go in fast. We had to be smart. So we sent in an undercover officer with a lie. He told John he hit his car. It got him out of the house, got him talking. We brought him in quietly. At first, he was polite, cooperative. He smiled. He talked about his time growing up in Germany, his father's military service. But when we asked about 1963, his tone shifted. He confessed to something in Germany. A young girl, Margaret Williams, 15 years old. He said he didn't remember much, just that he was accused of killing her. Served time, then came back to the States like nothing happened. Then came the questions about Stanford. Do you remember Leslie Perloff? He said no. Janet Taylor? No. But he made mistakes. He referenced details we hadn't mentioned. He described places we never told him about. He slipped again and again. We kept pressing. Your DNA was found on Leslie, John. Not near her, not in the area, on her body. He leaned back, eyes twitching. I have no idea how that happened, he said. Lies. And Janet? I don't even know who she is. More lies. When we showed him a picture of Leslie, he hesitated. He said she looked familiar, then changed his mind. He was breaking. Finally, I asked him, if you were me and you had your DNA on 2 murdered women, what would you think? He went quiet. Then he said, I guess you found me. That was the moment. Not quite a confession, but it was enough. We arrested him for the murder of Janet Taylor, then Leslie. He pleaded not guilty, of course, but the DNA didn't lie. That was just the beginning. When 𝐬𝐮𝐞 was officially charged, media outlets exploded. People couldn't believe a man who lived among them, who went to church, coached scouts, raised a family, was capable of such horror. But monsters wear many masks. During the investigation, we unearthed his past in Germany. In 1963, when he was only 18, he'd been arrested for the rape and murder of a 15-year-old girl named Margaret Williams. Her body was found behind a youth club in a German town. He was convicted but released after a few years due to his age. We reviewed his employment records, volunteer history, and places he lived. Every new detail painted the same picture: a predator who had perfected the art of hiding in plain sight. As the case gained national attention, survivors from his past began to come forward. Women who once filed complaints. Teens who remembered strange behavior. We couldn't open every file, but we saw the pattern: manipulation, control, silence. The trial was grueling. Janet Taylor's family sat in court every day, holding pictures, wiping tears. The defense tried to dismiss the DNA as contamination, but experts tore those arguments apart. The prosecution laid out everything: the timeline, the evidence, the lies. When the jury delivered the guilty verdict, the courtroom was silent. Then, a whisper of relief. Justice, at last. In 2023, 𝐾𝐿 confessed to the murder of Leslie Perloff as part of a plea deal. It was a quiet, tired confession from a man who had run out of places to hide. But there was one last twist. A pair of torn undergarments, evidence from the Janet Taylor case, contained genetic material matching 𝐾𝐿's profile. That final link erased any lingering doubts. It shut the door on speculation. He was the killer. Of Janet, of Leslie, and maybe of others we may never discover. He died in prison later that year. No fanfare, no final words, just a quiet end to a loud legacy of suffering. Today, his DNA is still being used in cold case databases. Every now and then, a new file pops up. A lead, a new victim, a new family waiting for answers. The case reminded me, and everyone in the department, that time doesn't erase truth. It waits, buried beneath silence, tucked inside broken families and dusty folders. But justice never forgets. I still carry the photo of Leslie and Janet, not just as victims, but as reminders. Reminders that the past always speaks, if we're willing to listen. Detective Griever, I speak for the ones who can't.